Welcome to Mixtapes and Tasty Cakes podcast. I'm Bert Lepore. He's Damian Monte Carlo. We're hanging here with Angry Mike D, and we talk about music, movies, and so much more.
Right, we're back with another episode of Mixtapes and Tasty Cakes. Episode, what do we got? 89?
89.
Damn.
It's getting up here.
Yeah. 89. Episode 89. So it's the Midnight Metal Edition.
Yeah, we're recording a little late tonight. I was on double dildo duty.
Yeah, so I was just thinking the other day, we haven't really touched on this, and I think it might be a little cool topic and maybe a little educational for some people who aren't really music nerds like us. But thinking of like music scenes, you don't really see it too much now, right?
Yeah, there's
The
not
internet
really going on
scene.
now. Yeah, there's not.
Yeah,
Really
it's
going
like,
on now.
yeah, but it was always like, you had the British invasion, you had the that San Francisco like hippie scene in the 60s, you had all different, even like other genres of music like hip hop in New York, rap, in the 70s, you had disco in like the 70s in New York and stuff. And so I figure maybe we talk about some music scenes, rock based stuff, and notable bands, the time period it started in, maybe downfall of it or whatever, just
let's
talk
just free roll it and bullshit. So Dame, you could pick the first ever. What do you want to do?
Well, top one I have right here is like Seattle.
All right, let's
Right.
go right into that grunge.
So I think the seeds were planted sometime in like the mid 80s. Some of those bands started to come around, like that kind of like forked off into other bands like Pearl Jam and stuff. So you had like
all your favorite bands.
all my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah.
All the favorites, but it's a part of history, and it's very, it's important. It's an important part of history.
It was a movement. It was a huge movement. Yeah. And it's weird because with the grunge stuff and all that stuff, it's not just the music. It was even that look. It was like, it was a whole thing. Cause Alice in Chains sounds nothing like Nirvana, but when you mention grunge, you throw them right in together. It was the whole change. Even though Alice in Chains is still a fucking metal band at the end of the day. I don't care what anybody says. Same thing with Soundgarden. But it was that change. But if you ask me, out of all the grunge bands, who was the grunge band? When I think of grunge, I think of, even though they're a metal band, I think Soundgarden. That's who I think.
Yeah, I'd say that sort of like if you say Seattle, who's the first band you think, I'd probably think of them.
Yeah,
probably first, because they kind of came out a little bit earlier too. Like they were like in the late 80s, so their first records came out, and there was other bands like Mother Love Bone, Green River,
which turned into Pearl Jam, and Mother Love Bone to me sounded nothing like Pearl Jam. You know what? Matter of fact, guys, as we're rolling, instead of doing it like we usually do, let's just do a 3-for-all. Let's just talk it out like we would talk out normally. Let's not even go in order, and let's just fucking bullshit about this. So, Mother Love Bone sounded nothing, at least to me, sounded nothing like Pearl Jam. And I still, to this, even though I like Mother Love Bone, no way would they have been as big as Pearl Jam got. No way. I don't think
they wouldn't have. No. Would have been interesting where they went after that, but they kind of remind me of some other bands that came out in like the early 90s, like bands like Warrior Soul and like Saigon Kick and band like they
and
probably would have fit in with more like
I love Saigon Kick,
but they would have fit like
that.
alternative flavored metal.
And the singer was kind of flamboyant. He was kind of he was more, I wouldn't say glam, but he had more, he wasn't any
like
better,
look or something.
Almost like Shannon Hoonish, but like harder rocker.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
Another one of Damien's favorite bands.
Shannon Hoon.
Yeah. I know you probably saw Blind Melon a lot.
I actually did. I think I saw them open up for the Rolling Stones. I did.
Really?
Actually.
They're
How
like
were
one of
they?
your like top 5 bands, right, Damien?
God, dude, I fucking hate them. I never got into them, man. I never got into. I don't even. They were like an LA band, or were they from Indiana? I know Shannon Hoon was from Indiana. I don't know if the whole band was.
Yeah, I
but
don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I thought they would have been more like a Guns N' Roses kind of.
that's what I thought. Because
Well, we
they're
all thought he was going to be like a hard
associated
rock
with
singer when we see him with Axel.
Yeah.
I
it was
mean,
nothing
they
like
had
that.
some cool stuff. Not one of my favorites. But,
Yeah.
One
of these days, I mean, honestly, I think I only know like 1 or 2 songs. I don't want to put everything on that.
That little Bumblebee turns you off.
Yeah, it's just hearing it, dude. It was on MTV all the time back in the '93.
Mm-hmm.
So even like looking at some of the stuff, I guess, we're sticking to, I guess, the Seattle stuff, but even stuff that wasn't in Seattle, like you remember the girls band Babes in Toyland? That's like, they were kind of like considered grunge, even though
I know the name.
L7 was from Seattle.
They were pretty
was
good.
Seattle, yeah.
Babes in where were they from? Yeah, for some reason I kind of,
it wasn't
maybe
Seattle.
they were an LA band.
Yeah, it wasn't Seattle, but they were pretty big for a while. You got Mudhoney.
Yeah, well, they were all influenced by that.
It was like the Pixies were, kind of the influence of Nirvana. Actually, Nirvana like really stole a lot of their stuff.
Right.
But,
yeah, that's pretty known.
But when they talk about the movement, like, who do you consider in that movement? I mean, you got to think of, Nirvana. You got to think of Pearl Jam,
Big
Soundgarden, and
Alice in Chains.
Alice in Chains. They're the big
I don't call those last two though. I don't consider them. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't
but it
care,
was part of that movement. It was part of that movement. To me, they're metal bands. But yeah,
what? Just because they wore flannel? I don't know.
It was part of that
because
movement.
They're from the city, and it was.
Well, I know, but it's part of the city. But you're not going to call like Run DMC a rock band because they're from California or whatever, or a certain city. But you wouldn't do that.
Yeah, but you can make the case about Queens, right? They're from Seattle,
right?
So they came out. They came out 10 years before all that stuff. They're from like the early '80s.
Even that, but totally Soundgarden was out for a bit before that really broke.
Yeah, they were like late '80s, like a lot of those bands. They started out all around the same time, like the Seeds were planted.
Look, their management just threw them into that. Their management just said, "Hey, they're grunge," just so they're not going to fade into the glam stuff and heavy metal stuff.
As far as marketing goes. If you market, that's what you do. That's part of marketing. So if we're making money with this and this is the turnaround, how could we? And look, we've seen everybody do it from every genre. You market to what's selling because it's all about.
You're talking about Alice in Chains, right, Mike?
Yes, I'm talking about Alice in Chains and Soundgarden.
Yeah.
Well, you might be onto that because early on, like take like Alice in Chains, for instance, right? They opened up for Poison on like a few weeks of the Flesh and Blood tour. I mean, they open up for Van Halen, and then maybe during the first album came out, 90, I think it was. So
I mean, they were on Headbangers Ball all the time with Loud Love,
and they were on that. They were on that the Clash of the Titans tour, all the thrash bands.
Alice in Chains?
I wouldn't call them thrash either.
No. I know, but they were touring with more bands like
they
were not like the category that they were thrown into.
Yeah. Well, I think it's right before that category came up, Yeah,
it was like back in the day, it was like, they caught a lot of shit from like the metal dudes because they were like, they didn't even want to give them a chance because they got that grunge label. So it was like, oh, I hate them, they're stupid fucking grunge band,
Well, yeah, they got booed when they opened up for Van Halen.
Like even Alice in Chains wasn't
That's
really
what I was talking about,
big into the metalheads back then, It wasn't until later.
Their name came. I mean, if forget about what they became, just listen to the name, Alice in Chains. And imagine if it was spelt like if the S was a Z. That's a totally fucking 80s name. I mean, they could have been playing the Sunset Strip with fucking Warrant and all those other bands. And it was. I mean, if you ever see pictures of what they look like,
what they sound
Did
like
you ever
too.
hear what they sounded like?
Yeah, that too.
Oof.
It was a good thing they changed. It was a good thing.
Yeah, Lane Staley looked like Ricky Rocket's brother. I mean, the hair and everything.
They were worse than Pantera doing the hair metal.
Yeah,
bad too. Yeah.
So, they kind of swept that under the rug really good. So, Mike, you might be onto something. They might have. It might have been just how they are marketed as
Yeah,
things were
man.
progressing. You know?
Dude, I'm sorry, they are metal all day, every day.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're the most metal out of all of them. Out of all those
Smashing
bands.
Pumpkins, the same thing. Like if you want to count them in that,
They're always that borderline. They count them in that grunge
They're
thing,
from
even
Chicago.
though they're
were they Chicago? I thought they
Chicago band. Yeah,
but weren't they? They were labeled Seattle, I believe, earlier.
Nah, but it was like
it's that movement.
I think
I
like,
could be wrong. I could be totally wrong
like
with that, but I always believe that they were labeled from that Seattle area.
nah, they're always like Chicago, like they always made that known. But I think like the scene kind of created a music genre came out of it, and they were part of that genre, just like Stone Temple Pilots. They're from San Diego.
Right. Stone Temple gets thrown in that category slightly too. Yeah, of course they do.
It was so big back then. Even bands like Kiss were doing grunge.
Everybody, yeah, it was it kind of yeah, right there you go.
I got you first. I said it first.
Well, same thing with the 80s.
So it kind of got tossed in there.
You have bands that change their look and sound because they adapted. Listen, it's all about what's going on now, what's selling. That's just the way it works. It's marketing. No matter if you're selling fucking ketchup or if you're selling fucking t-shirts or music, whatever they could sell you on. We're thinking like old men. You got to think of the kids, the young people, you know?
Yeah, there was a bunch of bands that came out of that, you know, out of the ones we mentioned. You got Mudhoney, you got Tad. Remember Tad?
Yeah. Tank.
The name sounds familiar.
Tad, yeah.
Tad, T-A-D. The singer was like he was like 400 pounds. It was huge.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man, I remember that. Yep.
The Melvins, they're probably around earlier. You know,
they were like
the Melvins probably
kind of sludge metal.
80% of that sound.
Probably, yeah,
absolutely.
They're one of the early ones.
Yeah, and I try to get into them. I'm not really a Melvins guy.
You know what?
But they're big influence.
Screaming Trees were good. They were really good. Screaming Trees.
Mark
Lanigan, man. Even in the Queens of the Stone Age, man, he was great.
Yeah, they're the Seattle bands I have. I don't know if you guys have any more, but you know, it's
yeah. Well, if we go four big, the four big: Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Nirvana.
It kind of seemed by like 94, 95, it was kind of like over, you know. Yeah. And then you started seeing like the second, third tier type bands that were spinning off all over the country and other places, you know. Yeah. The Creeds and shit like that.
Oh,
yeah.
You know.
Well, they took the Eddie Vedder sound and stuff like that, and
then it was kind of over and morphed into.
I couldn't take that band at all, man. Yeah. They were like a turn off the TV band.
Oh yeah,
change the channel, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that with the grunge pretty much hit. You had your glam metal that was kind of fading out into that funk. A lot of funk metal was right after that, right? Would you say? And then it probably hit the grunge right after that. But at the end of the day, it's all music, you know.
Funk metal was just like kind of like a footnote. It's something that never really happened.
Very brief, yeah.
It was like it was supposed to be like the next thing, but it wasn't. It didn't really.
Right. There was only a few bands that survived. Like the same thing with the grunge era. You know, the bands we mentioned were the ones that carried on. You know, a lot of them fell to the side.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like whatever genre. It's just the way it is. Let's move on to the British Invasion, which is a huge one.
That is a huge one. That was probably, I think, all the bands that we grew up listening to were pretty much influenced directly from that stuff. And so a lot of those bands, they kind of were influenced by like the Chuck Berry and Elvis and like the Buddy
blues.
Holly, the 50s. Yeah. And some of the blues, and they kind of, you know, some of those bands, they toured in England, and you know, they kind of influenced like the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, the Yardbirds, Who,
the Kinks,
the Animals. Like they were Paul Revere and the Raiders. I think they were.
They have part of that. I think Dave Clark 5.
They were Dave Clark 5. Yeah, and there was a lot of them, and there was a lot. You know.
And then you had like a lot of them bands that were like, there was a lot of one-hit wonders mixed in there too, and it was a movement created pretty much by the Beatles, Rolling Stones, and you know, I guess you could say the Yardbirds too. I mean, there was an all-star band more than once, you know. But yeah, I mean, that was a crazy movie. It changed. Now, that really changed the world at that time because it was so different and things were so different back then. You know, I mean, they were considered long hair, like if you had hair past your ears.
I know, like short hair
it's like an inch above your eyebrows. That's long hair.
Yeah. Well, you know, if you didn't have where your hair slicked back and buzzed, it was considered long, you know. Kind of weird.
That's fucking hilarious.
Like, I think even Elvis had they even thought Elvis had long hair. Like that was like considered long, you know.
You couldn't even view it. You couldn't even like pan in on his hips.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
But there were all those bands were influenced by you know, by Elvis and stuff. And then you know, if you look at early pictures of those bands, they all had the pompadours and the Elvis hair. And then the Beatles were the ones that kind of they come straight down, and then you see all the other bands with the
I used to have the pompa mullet, man.
Mullet.
It was like this pompadour, and I had the fucking hair and like the mullet and ponytail on the back. I don't know. It was like my own. I don't know. It was like a fucking.
It was the Eddie Guerrero,
gel, man.
It looks like it was the Eddie Guerrero.
You could hit me over the head with a sledgehammer. This thing it wouldn't hurt me.
But you got to think, you know, the biggest bands, Rolling Stones, Beatles. I mean, absolutely, two of the biggest bands ever came out of that.
Who do you think's the third out of them? If you had to pick the big four of the British,
for me would be the Beatles, Rolling Stones, the Kinks, probably. And who would be the last one? I mean, I kind of like some of the Animal stuff. I don't know.
You don't know.
I mean, the Who.
Yeah.
The Who. I forgot about the fucking Who.
Yeah. So I would agree with you. I think. I mean, as to four,
I can't really think of any more. I mean, the Kinks are kind of big. Not really my thing, but
yeah. So you would say the Beatles, the Stones, the Kinks, and the Who, the big four. Okay, that's we created our big four. There goes our big four.
So I'm sure there's probably one that we're missing. That's probably huge. That I don't know, but I think that would be British Invasion. That's got to be the big four from that, you know.
Yeah, I can't believe I forgot the Who. I keep forgetting to consider them at that era because they've been around so long. I always think of them as like a 70s band more, but
the Who, well, they had a lot of success in the 70s. Same thing with the Stones.
60s
I mean, they
too,
did
right?
too. I mean,
when they come out, late 60s.
Like they all came out around the same time, between like 62 and 64. 62, 63, 64.
Right. Like I said, like
if you're hitting up to 68, then you're hitting like Zeppelin territory there.
Yeah, that's a whole other wave. Yeah,
right.
That's a whole other thing.
So if you look at it, but like we were talking the grunge, the band's music that survived through all that time, not considered a one-hit wonder, that bands that were still big names were, you know, them four names are still huge, you know?
Yeah, and then you could say, I mean, the Beatles are probably the number one band of all time.
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah.
The Stones have got to be they got to be
two.
Five.
They got to be two. Even though I'm not you, I mean, they got to be two, right?
Yeah.
And then you're probably going to go Zeppelin,
definitely.
Probably three. You know, even I would put Sabbath ahead of them, but Zeppelin's probably
well,
three.
if you talk,
that could be
debatable. Yeah. So I think that's what we got for the British Invasion. Yeah. How about this, Damo? Let's go to 70s punk. Let's go with CBGB, them bands, that era, that movement.
Yeah, I think a lot of that stuff came out of originally came out of like that whole Andy Warhol scene in like the late 60s and the 70s. It was like kind of like, you know, like art rock type shit, like Velvet Underground.
Yeah,
you know, all that kind of weird stuff. And you kind of like, hey, how did that come in? You know, how did that have to do anything with all those other bands? Well, you know, it indirectly did, you know, kind of spawned a couple other ones, like the New York Dolls were influenced by all that. And they're, you know, they're one of the early punk bands with MC5 and Iggy Pop. You know, all those bands, they all hung out, you know, in New York. You know,
the Ramones,
CBGB's,
Blondie, all of them.
Even
the Dictators.
I love the Dictators.
Yeah, there's a ton
Talking
of
Heads.
Talking Heads.
Talking
Patti
Heads.
Smith was probably the biggest thing in there at one time.
Yeah.
You know,
Television.
Yeah. Even the
Police.
Misfits.
They played the Police
Misfits.
played their first American gig, and
Did they really? I didn't know that.
CBGBs, yeah.
CBGBs, yeah.
Yeah, but they weren't part of
Nah, I wouldn't.
that
Nah.
scene.
No.
But they played. I mean, a lot of bands played. AC/DC played there.
Yeah, CBGBs probably was like the punk version of Studio 54. Maybe, I don't know, something.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, for disco, you know. Yeah, but you know, dude, you know what I didn't know till today, and I looked it up, that CBGB stands for Country Bluegrass,
And
Country
blues.
Bluegrass Blues, and other music uplifting. I don't even know what the fuck this word is. Gourmetizers.
Yeah.
Gourmetizers? What's a gourmetizer?
I heard that before. I couldn't even tell you that off the top of my head, but I heard it before.
Yeah,
You're a real fucking gourmetizer.
yeah. Well, because Hilly Crystal, the guy who opened it up, CBGB's, he really originally wanted to be just sort of like a country blues kind of bar,
Right.
you know. And then the Ramones come in, and they kind of just
Change the whole
started
scene.
playing their own version of like surf rock, pretty much. And or 60, they're really big into like 60s rock, you know, like the Beach Boys and shit like that, you know, just like sped up a lot faster. And you know, a lot of those bands came out of that, like we mentioned, you know, Blondie. You know, you think of them as like a punk band, but they're all part of that whole.
Right. Well, even the Talking
whole
Heads.
scene.
I mean, because
Yeah.
you know, listen, when I think of Talking Heads, my mind goes back to when I was younger, and you know, you might find yourself. You know, I'm thinking of that burning down the house video and the big coat with the fuck is going
The early stuff was like really good, man.
Yeah,
the first few albums are really good.
But dude, I couldn't watch that video because the coat would get on my nerves. I would watch the
Yeah.
big coat and he's fucking, what the fuck is going on with this dude? Now I understand it better, but it was just too weird for me back then. You may find yourself.
You know what? I kind of like them because it was that I must have watched like Revenge of the Nerds like a billion times, and that song "Burning Down the House" was there. So that's how I kind of like remember the Talking Heads from. But
Right.
they had some really good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few tunes I do like. Psycho Killer was a good song. Burning Down the House is a good song. And they had what's the other one? When the taste of life,
Take me to the river.
I always get them confused with the Cars.
The Cars are
They
good.
kind of have it.
For some
So they have a
Might be the
similar
deep
kind of-
voice. I
I
prefer
don't
the
know.
Cars.
Yeah.
I prefer the Cars.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Blondie, big time out of there. Deborah Harry. I mean, they were a big name there.
Yeah.
You know, I never really got into the Patti Smith stuff too much. You know,
Yeah.
Nah.
I'm yeah, same here.
the Dead Boys. I know the name. I really haven't heard much of their stuff.
Yeah,
if I
Dead Boys
even heard
I
anything.
think they were from like Cleveland or somewhere in Ohio, but they kind of like moved and kind of like situated in around New York, I think, and we're kind of part of that whole scene. I love them too. They're
I got to check the stuff. I might have heard. I don't remember too much about it. Now,
yeah.
You know, we just did that Pistol show. Did the Pistols ever play CBGBs? They had to, right?
I don't know if they did. I don't know if they did, honestly.
For some reason, you think they would.
Those
right?
bands didn't they didn't really get along with them. I mean, the Ramones hated them.
It was a different clique, yeah. It was a different clique.
Yeah, Johnny Thunders, he was in the New York Dolls. When he left, he started his own band, Johnny Thunders and the Heartbreakers, and they toured over in England with the Sex Pistols, the Damned, I think, and another band. It was like pretty famous tour, but he didn't get along with them, with those guys. Like, a bunch of Americans,
Yeah, you think it would work, but I guess because you think that would be a band that would be primed to play that place, you know?
Yeah.
But I never was.
They played. Yeah, I think they touched on it in the show. I think they I don't think they played like the major cities. I think they kind of stuck with like weird places like down south, just to kind of like, I think they put them in places where they wouldn't fit just to get a reaction, more of a reaction
because you
from
would think New York off the bat. Yeah, it should work in New York.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, put them in like somewhere in Alabama where it would make absolutely no sense and it would just piss people off even
weird.
more. So.
Now, like I was going to say, I never been to CBGBs. Have you, Dane, Mike?
Nah, I've definitely, I've never had a reason to go because there was never any bands that I was really into that played there. But I've been past it many times. It's now it's a John Varvatos.
What the hell's that?
So John Varvatos, he's like a kind of like a rock and roll fashion designer. So you go in there, do where the old CBGB's is. He kept all the walls and everything. He got, I think he still has a stage, or maybe they moved it, but he wanted to keep it as original as possible. But so you go in there and you spend like $2,000 for a leather jacket. How ironic is that? You go into like a place like that shithole it used to be.
Yeah.
Now it's like this big, like fat, like a rock and roll fashion designer's place. John Varvatos, he's like a celebrity designer.
Yeah, it's a shame they didn't make like some kind of like museum out of it or something, you know?
Well,
the idea they took all the toilets out and some of the walls, and they're actually going to like move it to Vegas and open up one out there using all the
original bullshit.
Stuff they had, but the owner wound up dying a few years after they closed. And
well, they closed in like 2006.
Yeah.
So that's pretty long. You figure they opened somewhat in the 70s or before, you know, that's
like 74 maybe or something.
That's a pretty long run, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, the rent, I mean, at one time in New York, that was like a really bad area.
Yeah.
In the Bowery area. Now, dude, if you go there now, you would never even think that was a bad area now because it's all like high end.
It's all fixed up.
You know, yeah, big time.
Wow. Okay, so we see out of the, not the punk area, just the CBGB bands. Who do you say the big four?
Who to what?
Who do you think the big four would be in the CBGB bands?
Probably Ramones, Blondie, Talking Heads, and Patti Smith.
Yeah. You got to put Patti Smith, even though it's not my deal. You got to put Patti Smith in there. I think she played the last show also. I think she might have played the last show that was there. And they like she was supposed to be the shit there. Like she was the one that everybody went to go see. You know, it's crazy. I never really got into her stuff. You know, I don't know much.
Yeah, I haven't either. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's definitely, as far as music goes, that place is legendary. That's legendary. All right, guys, let's move on to the next section here. Let's go with the Bay Area thrash scene. Nice. Who wants to start off? Damo, Mike? Anybody want to jump in here?
Yeah, I guess the biggest one is probably, you could put this in the top 5, you know, biggest bands, rock bands. You know, Metallica came from there.
Yeah.
Originally they were an LA band, but to get Cliff Burton, they wanted Cliff Burton. He was in San Francisco, so they wound up relocating, and they just discovered this whole scene that was starting to happen up there, and they just, you know, made that their home. And other bands were like Exodus. They came out. They were big at the same time. Possessed. So they were like the early bands, and then you had like Death Angel, Testament. Sure, there's a bunch of others. I actually, believe it or not, Megadeth and Slayer were LA bands. They weren't.
Yeah, everybody I think thinks Slayer was part of that, and they really weren't.
Right.
They were of the sound, but they weren't from the area, because I think everybody thinks Slayer is part of that. You know.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, for the thrash scene, I mean, a huge movement, man. I mean, it was just big. Death Angel.
That was more like what? Like that was like a darker sound, right? More or less
fast, just fast. You know, fast.
Yeah,
it was
like the New York sound was a little more on the fun side, I think, right? Like where this was.
Oh, you're talking like, the opposite between the thrash bands?
I think New York stuff was more like kind of like hardcore.
Punky kind of,
a little more hardcore.
Where I think these guys were more technical, more like a technical and speed kind of thing, I would think.
Yeah,
you know, with Death Angel and stuff like that. I think you're right, Dame. I think the New York version of the thrash stuff came more from the hardcore stuff. and
right. Like
the other side was
Anthrax
more of a.
so they're more part of like the whole. They're more if they're kind of like thrash influenced by like CBGB's punk and hardcore stuff.
Yeah, I would think so. And these other guys were more like, I don't want to say totally classical kind of stuff, but it was more how fast can you play, and keep up the speed and
yeah.
Exodus was friggin' huge in that scene, man. They were huge. Metallica,
yeah, they were one of the early ones.
They were one of the early. And what's his name playing with Slayer now? Was it Gary Holt?
Well, it was, yeah.
He was playing with Slayer when they were around, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all them guys knew each other for a long, long time. I mean, one of my favorite bands, who I think they're huge, but they're still underrated, is Testament. I think Testament's unbelievable.
Yeah,
they were really good.
So good. So good. And, they're still putting out stuff today also, half of the lineup, I think, is the same at least. Yeah, but that Death Angel, same thing. We did a Thrash episode, and we talked about Death Angel. They were all young when they started. And
Violence.
very technical. Violence, yep.
Forbidden was another one.
Yeah, I remember Forbidden. Possession was a little different. They were a little darker.
Possessed.
And Possessed, that's what I mean. Possessed was a little darker.
Yeah, they were probably one of the early death metal bands.
Yeah.
Definitely one of the founding fathers, like along with like Venom, Celtic Frost.
Yep.
They're probably
Yep.
Well,
since you mentioned Venom, let's go to the British wave of heavy metal.
New wave of British
heavy metal. There you go. Let's move on to that section, Damo.
Yeah, so you get the big ones, probably the two biggest are Def Leppard and Iron Maiden. Hard to believe Def Leppard came out of that, but they did. They're part of that whole scene. They were teenagers, during that.
Even like I read some stuff. I know we were talking about this earlier that some people still put Motorhead in that scene. They do.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I guess they could be, I don't know. Because they were around earlier than
right. Well, that's why we're not including Priest because of that. Because Priest was around there.
Well,
70s, right?
Yeah.
Well, we are considering Maiden now. I mean, they were 70s. Def Leppard was what?
Yeah, but they were
70s.
They are like
were Def Leppard 70s?
Late 70s.
Late 70s. Yeah.
Yeah, they were
when
part
was
of
their
that
debut?
movement.
Like for
80, I think.
Yeah, by the time it came out.
Or 80.
But Maiden was the
main
album. Maiden was the main band from that probably movement.
Yeah, they're like the focal point of.
You had Saxon.
Scene.
Saxon was big at that point.
I don't know. It's hard to not put Judas Priest in that because were they
they're
really
way before?
Like,
yeah, they're way before.
I know they're way before, but
they started.
That's when they started getting big, I think.
Yeah, but they were already playing. They were playing all over the world by that time. I mean, they were.
I lump them in there just out of because that I think that it fits, But technically, they're really not part of that, even though you think they came out. I mean, they're celebrating their 50th anniversary, so they were like 10 years before that stuff. Yeah.
Their first album came out in like 74, I think. They were touring with Kiss on the Dynasty tour when those bands.
That's
so
crazy.
So you put that in perspective. They were already established and starting, making their themselves known by that time. But
and then we talk about even like we just were talking about the Bay Area thrash scene, and look how many bands were influenced.
I mean,
by that
directly from that. Yeah.
I'm looking here, and it's like I'm going to fight for Priest here because it says they didn't gain popularity until 1980.
Yeah, but they were already signed. But they were already signed.
They're already a name. They were already
out. Those bands were just getting started. Like they were all
like to Iron Maiden. Judas Priest has been around already. Like they were the new movement. Iron Maiden.
Right. Yeah, like Iron Maiden was influenced by like Judas Priest and Black Sabbath, and I mean, Black Sabbath and Judas Priest were only separated by a couple years,
right? And you wouldn't think, because I think same way I think with Motorhead, the way Mike thinks, where I think they're always a part. Like, that's all part of that late 70s kind of. Because to me, Judas Priest, even though I like their earlier stuff, they really didn't turn that corner until that sound. Once that sound came out, they kind of adapted a little bit more, because they were more like I don't want to say a power metal, but they're more like a little more proggy-ish, sort of. You know, and then
they were kind of like on the Led Zeppelin side, but
yeah,
when they first started, they were
they were wearing the frilly clothes, and it's weird.
Yeah,
it's
weird. Kind of like hippie,
they went from frills to leather.
Yeah, which see that's another point. Like, was that they kind of started the whole leather thing, and all those new wave of British heavy metal bands adapted that, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's a good argument though.
It's a tough one.
It's a tough one because
I'm sticking to my guns.
Technically, it's probably the other way around, but for me, in my head, I consider them with that in my head. But but like we were saying that all of that new wave of British heavy metal totally influenced all them Bay Area bands. They, Diamond Head. I mean, Metallica covered a shitload of these guys.
Diamond Head, yeah.
Diamond Head was a big one. We're like, we heard the fucking cover song and we're like, who's Diamond Head? But they were influenced by them. Saxon. Who else came out of that movement? Venom. Venom's considered
Angel
that.
Witch.
Angel Witch was big. Venom was one of the first black metal bands. Who else we got here? Tank, which was one of the guys from The Damned, was in that band.
Yeah, I'm looking at
the Tigers of Pang Tang. How about that one?
I don't remember that.
Raven.
What was that song? Oh, I mean, they had a couple of really good songs. Yeah, I kind of like some Raven.
Tokyo Blade.
Girl School.
Yeah,
you could probably consider Girl School.
Girl School I like. Yeah. I like Girl School.
Another one of the first female. Were they out before the Runaways, or were the Runaways out first?
They're like right after them, I think.
It was close, yeah.
Yeah.
And what's the name? I think Girl School still kind of plays now. I don't know who's in the lineup, but I think the drummer might be the same. They still play.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably like one original member.
Yeah. That was one of Lemmy's buddies' band.
Lemmy a lot of these bands I just know from hearing them from Metallica.
Yeah.
Interviews and stuff. To be honest,
shit, Saxon still put stuff out.
Yeah, I saw them on the Monster Rock Cruise. They're still pretty, he's still.
Can the guy sing still good? So can Biff still?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I mean,
what about Spinal Tap? You put Spinal Tap in this?
Well, didn't they start according to the movie like in the 60s or something?
Flower Power movement.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Which is a great segue. We could touch on that. The hippy dippy, the Flower Power movement. You got to think Janis Joplin. I mean, who else was from that area?
Yeah, well,
Grateful Dead,
San Francisco, Grateful Dead,
Jimi Hendrix.
But he wasn't from that area though. I mean, he's part of that movement, but who was from that area, that Bay area?
He did well. I don't know. He kind of gained success in England though, right?
He did, yeah. He kind of, and then he came to New York. But the whole San Francisco,
Jefferson Airplane, they were huge there.
Grateful Dead.
There was another big name band.
Janis Joplin. She was from San Francisco, I think.
Yeah, she was a big name there. Yeah. But
that do you consider like all that, like Leonard Skinner and all that stuff?
Nah, that's Southern rock.
It's more like
Southern rock.
Yeah. That was they weren't really. That wasn't really. Like
they were after. They were more rock and roll.
They kind of got lumped up into that hippie stuff, though.
Nah, for me, no, I didn't think so. I think
not for me either. But
there are a few years after that.
Yeah,
that Flower Power shit was over by like.
You know what I think you're thinking of, Mike? That Freedom Rock commercial that they probably mixed the song.
Maybe right.
Freedom Rock.
That's what I'm saying. Like I remember as a kid, like that would always.
Yeah.
Turn it up, man.
I think it's what you're thinking. Because we think it's all that hippy dippy stuff, and you hear Sweet Home Alabama in that mix. But but even that I only know one song by him. That Scott McKenzie guy. That are you going to San Francisco? Like it's a great song, But that's what you think,
Mamas and Papas. I kind of think they're LA band though.
Yeah, I mean they're all a part of that sound, but who came from that area? I think it was Janis was the big one. Grateful Dead, fucking still huge today. It's amazing. It's amazing, but that spawned a lot of
Francisco.
Shit. There was a song called Eva Destruction that was kind of big around there. I forget the guy's name, But yeah, there was some awesome fucking songs. I mean, shit. Do you consider the Doors part of the Flower Power movement? You know, maybe.
Nah, they were definitely not a part of that.
No,
They were so against that shit.
Yeah, but they
And
were.
they were an LA band. They were not. Jim Morrison would be rolling in his grave if he hears this conversation.
Yeah, but it had the same audience. Like it was like
it's like it's 60s rock, but it's like saying,
not a huge Doors fan.
Yeah, they were definitely not that.
they were anti the Flower Power.
Here, I got a list. Santana was part of that.
Really?
Scene. Yeah, Blue Cheer.
Oh,
was
yeah.
part of that scene.
Okay, I can see Blue Cheer.
Actually, they have Sly and the Family Stone listed in that.
Simon and
Big Brother and
Garfunkel.
Holding Company. Simon and Garfunkel. That's they're
Yeah.
fun.
Oh yeah. I mean,
They
you
were
got
hippie
Bob
dippy.
Dylan.
I mean, all that
They were
hippie dippy
beatniks.
stuff. Yeah,
They're beatniks. That kind of like they were like the predecessors of the hippies, the beatniks.
What do you call a
Yeah,
masturbator? A beatnik.
I don't know. Bob Dylan kind of hit that hippie crowd though.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, but he wasn't part of
that. But he wasn't part of
Yeah.
that Flower Power.
He was in New York. He was part of that. I would put him with Simon and Garfunkel, with those guys. They came out of the same area at the same time.
Yeah.
50s.
Yeah,
late,
I think we're
early
focusing more on the sections of where they came from than just music, you know.
than the genre.
Yeah, because you can lump up so much stuff in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you talk genres, then you could put the Doors and
Yeah.
all that other stuff in there.
Because you hit that, like I'm thinking like who played
Right.
Woodstock, you know?
Right. Yep.
Right.
Yeah, because we all think it's hippy dippy or whatever, or even with grunge stuff is grunge. Yeah. Your brain goes right to that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was another big band. I don't know.
Spirit. They have this Steve Miller band.
Weren't they
have
like,
him part of that scene?
Weren't they like Native American Spirit?
No.
Or am I thinking of a different band?
Spirit was like this. They had that one hit. I Got a Line on You.
Oh yeah, I know that
And
song.
it was like some 16-year-old like guitar prodigy, and his stepdad was the drummer. He was like 50 years old or something. And I don't know who the other guys were, but they wound up suing Led Zeppelin like a couple years ago. Do you remember hearing about that case? It was like big news.
Zeppelin was
saying
robbing
that,
everybody.
that there was part that, like, because they toured with Zeppelin, opened up for them on their first tour.
Wow.
And it said that there was parts of a Spirit song in Stairway to Heaven. You know, I don't know why it took them 50, 60 years to sue them.
That's the Spirit.
You know,
Yeah. Better late than never.
I'm thinking, I was thinking of Redbone.
Redbone, yeah.
Oh, Mike, it's a family show.
They were like a Native American rock band.
Wow, that's crazy.
It was interesting, man. Like he had like the
Over.
headdress he would go around the stage on and everything.
Can't
They
do
had
that
some
tonight.
like
Can't do that tonight.
Where were they from, Redbone?
actually Los Angeles.
Kentucky.
Yeah. American funk rock.
Dude, I think from
Mike's
working all these hours, I'm
Mike's
silly.
all about the funk rock.
He likes the funk.
Yeah.
He's getting up and dancing right now. He's funky.
Yeah, I'm ready to get funky here.
I'm ready to go to bed and fuck myself.
Yeah. Redbone's still around.
No, are they? Wow. No, that band's still around.
Yep. They're all dead except the bass player. He's keeping it going.
Yeah.
Pat Vasquez.
Good for Pat. That's good.
Actually,
stuff.
there's a couple other guys still alive, but they're not in the band anymore. But I just pulled that up. It's for the hell of it.
All right, let's we got one more genre we could talk about here. Let's go with the one that hits me and Dane probably more than Mike, but the 80s Sunset Strip, man, all the shit we grew up with. Damo, start it off, buddy.
Yeah, I guess it's another one. Van Halen, you could put them in the same category as you put Motorhead. They were kind of like a little bit before,
but they were the beginning of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So Van Halen, Quiet Riot kind of came out in the same time, mid 70s.
Yeah, I think they were the spark of it.
Yeah, but then there was like a gap. There was like maybe 3-4 years where nobody got signed. So that's why I kind of like I kind of look at it as like Motley Crue starting it.
Mm-hmm.
Because after Motley Crue, then everybody, then like the floodgates opened up. Then Quiet Riot, Ratt, W.a.s.p, and like a zillion others.
Now, would you consider that was on that strip scene, was Ratt bigger than Motley in the beginning?
Nah, I don't think so.
No. But they were both big at the same time.
They were, yeah, they were. Yeah. Well, Stephen Pearcy was originally from San Diego. And he moved up to LA. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even like Poison's really a Pennsylvania band. Right?
Yeah.
And they
moved to LA in like 85.
Yeah, Poison's a PA band.
Yeah, but by that time, LA it was already a scene. You know, it was already thriving. But like, you know, when Motley Crue started, there was no Motley Crues around. There was no other bands like them around, besides like W.a.s.P and Ratt. You know, everybody. You know, in interviews they say it was all new wave bands. You know, in LA, and then once Motley Crue got signed and everything, then they started signing other bands. You know, Ratt and Quiet Riot and W.a.s.P and
Striper. Because Striper's from that area.
And, and Black and Blue and where else?
LA Guns,
early ones. Yeah, they were like
a little later.
Wave.
Yeah.
Guns N' Roses, but they were a little bit later.
With second wave, they were. I think they were considered part of that. Yeah, but like near, you know, the second wave.
Well, what's kind of interesting though is that like I don't think the other scenes really had a longevity like this one did. Like this one pretty much throughout the entire decade.
Yeah.
The entire 80s. Like if you look at like some of the other ones, like they didn't really last that long.
No.
The new wave of British heavy metal, that was like probably a couple years.
Yeah.
Well,
if you could
British Invasion probably had a good amount.
That had a good run. Yeah.
You know, had a good Seattle run. Maybe had
6 years,
4 years, maybe 5. I don't know.
Even what was disco? 3 years, maybe 4 tops. 3.
That was yeah.
Wasn't that long?
4 that long. Maybe. Yeah. You know,
what it's 78ish, 9ish to 81, maybe, if that. That. Because that kind of evolved. I guess the dance stuff kind of evolved to house music, hip hop music, and I guess that was the
even hip hop.
Yeah, it just evolved, you know.
Yeah.
But going back to like even like Faster Pussycat, probably the second wave of that scene, I would say, right?
Yeah, there was like 2, 3, 4 waves, you know.
They that makeup just kept on coming.
Dude, it kept on coming, caking it back on, you know, even thicker.
Okay, so
you know, you get the first wave was probably like from like 80 to like 83, 80, and then like the second wave I say is like 84 to like 86, you know, and then wave 3 is like 87 to, you know, to like 90, and then that fourth wave you had a couple stragglers coming in like around 90, 91.
Yeah,
like
say like maybe like those Ugly Kid Joe was kind of like in that territory.
Like dude, they made it right out at the very end. Yeah,
Jackal.
Yeah, they were like the last wave.
Yeah,
you know, but
well, what would you consider the first wave? We'll say not counting the second wave there on the way up. The first wave,
the ones that we mentioned. The
Motley,
first one, the early
Ratt, Poison, and who would be the fourth? Would you consider W.a.s.P the fourth?
Motley, Ratt, who else?
Motley, Ratt, Poison. I would consider Poison definitely up there.
Now Poison was they were later, man.
Were they
like
later?
Second. Yeah, 86.
What was
their
their
first record came out?
Was it that early 86?
86, yeah.
Wow, I was going to say 88. Damn, I didn't realize it was 86.
Yeah,
so who
Motley Crue's first album came out, and Motley Crue's first album was 81. W.a.s.P was like 83. Quiet Riot was 83. Ratt was 83. Like that's like the first
wave. And I guess Quiet Riot, even though they were out before that's when they broke right around that time, I think, right?
Yeah, 83.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. The one thing I got for you, we all used to read Metal Edge, I'm sure, at one time or another.
Oh God, yeah.
The one band I think they're from that area that I thought they were pushing the break and never broke was Tough. I mean, we all seen pictures back in the day before we even knew who they were.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Stevie Rochelle does a ton of stuff now, but
Metal Sludge. Yeah.
yeah, he does Metal Sludge and all that stuff. He's actually seems pretty cool. But it looked like
I
that
don't
band
remember
was.
them.
You don't remember? If you see a picture, you'll know who they are. If
They were in Metal Edge for years.
yeah,
years
you know who
before
they
their
are
album
when you
came
see a
out.
picture. They were the band that it looked like they were going to be the next Poison. You know? Yeah, I mean, I thought that band was going to.
Was there? I'm thinking of it. Was there a band called like Tough Enough too, or something? Or am I?
I'm sure there
wrong?
was.
There were so many crazy names out there.
Yeah. And then there was Enough's Enough.
TUFF. Enough's Enough. They're from Chicago.
Oh, they were TUFF.
Chicago?
It was spelled. Oh, you know what? Now I kind of remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, not that we have to go too, I mean, I don't know how I'm going to edit this, but like even the 80s where you had that, I guess, that new wave kind of sound, that Duran Duran, Flock of Seagulls. I guess you can lump that up in the Kajagoogoo's.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think they call that like the new British invasion or something, the new wave of British invasion. Or they actually do have a name for that.
There's a genre
like,
for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like culture.
I would have
Club
called
and
it New
Duran
Wave,
Duran.
but
New wave.
Well, no,
absolutely,
they call it. Yeah, that's the genre, but the scene that it came from had its own. Its own name,
sort of like I don't want to say the mods. That was something else, but
just like Duran Duran type. What do you want to call that? New wave kind of danceable pop from England,
Yeah, like I don't know.
Adamant,
I don't know if
what was that like new romantic?
New romantic. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Would they consider the Boy Georges and the Culture Clubs? Would they consider them part of that?
Right.
Yeah. I'll tumble for you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's,
getting silly. Stupid.
That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not really my forte.
You know what's funny now? Now that we're older, we consider all that stuff the MTV generation stuff.
Right.
And I do appreciate it way more now than I did back then. Let me tell you, because a lot of today's stuff I'm kind of bored with.
The new romantic stuff is considered the second British invasion.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's all the Duran Duran stuff and all.
Duran Duran, Spandau Ballet.
Oh yeah, I remember them.
Who else they have here?
No Kajagoogoo's. Yeah. They were Australian or something, aren't they? I don't think they were. They weren't British. I don't think.
It's weird because a lot of that like CBGB stuff kind of blended right into that too. Like that new wave kind of
maybe.
Talking Heads definitely kind of blended into the new wave.
The Smiths,
they
have them in there.
That's another band that is huge, and I just never really.
I can't deal with that.
Never
I can't do it. I cannot do it.
Adamant was big for a little bit.
Yeah, New Romantics. Yeah,
the New Romantic scene, and that was what, like 80, 81-ish, maybe the beginning of that.
Up to like 85,
and maybe that's where Kiss, the Elder, maybe that's where Paul Stanley was going for that new romantic
look. The new romantic look could probably make sense, right?
Yeah, we want you guys to look like this. All right, I'll put the headband on. This new
band, Adamant and Duran Duran and Spandau Ballet. Yeah, is it Spandau Ballet or
Spandau Ballet?
I don't know.
They had a couple really, really big songs.
I don't even think I can name one of their songs.
The singer looked like Superman.
I don't know.
Yeah, that Superman.
Like Superman.
Well, yeah, that look like the Christopher Reeve kind of look.
I'm sure if we heard the song, we probably know.
Oh, the slow song's huge. There's a slow song that's huge.
But, that was never like my genre. That whole 80s was never really my thing.
Well, I'm trying to think. So you're 70. You're born what, 75-ish?
75, right?
80.
I'm more of 70s stuff.
Well, probably when you were a kid. When you were a kid, you probably didn't really start getting into stuff till heavily till probably about 88. I bet 88, 89, just because your age. You're
right.
12,
more like metal and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what happens.
The haircut you mentioned earlier was kind of influenced by the New Romantic era.
What's that?
Flock of Seagull?
Mike, the the
Papa
pompadour
mullet.
That's a new romantic hairstyle, kind of, right?
It's going for the new romantic style.
Well, I had it like that because like my job, like I wasn't allowed to have long hair at the time, so it was kind of like I just pulled it back and just.
Yeah. Well, isn't like the mullet in general sort of like a British style?
I think so. I think that Paul Young had.
Man.
I think it. Yeah. We got to find look up the origins of the mullet. I
think it's coming back. They're trying to do that shaved sides with the hair a little long in the back.
I hear, yeah.
Something's going on. Something's definitely going on.
I do not see a mullet in my future. Nor you, Albert.
No, a skullet. That's it. No mullet.
A skullet, maybe. No mullet.
Yeah. I can do what everybody else.
Haircut.
I can do what everybody else does in our genre and just put on a wig. Everybody else is doing it.
Right.
Okay. You want the first mullets were wig from the Native Americans.
The first mullet?
Yeah. No, it kind of like David Bowie kind of like made it famous.
Oh, yeah. If you look back, that famous picture with him with even the Ziggy Stardust stuff. Yeah, he had that back then. Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. It's weird. Speaking of Bowie, I know it's a little off topic here, but speaking of Bowie, I love a lot of David Bowie stuff, but I always found them fucking, I guess on purpose, odd and weird. I'm sure it was on purpose. Like, I really just didn't start liking until later on. Then I went back. When I was a kid, I'm like, who the fuck's this fucking nut? Yeah,
there's a lot of, he was part of like a lot of different genres and stuff. There's only some stuff that I like, but the stuff I do like, I really like. Like I like the early 70s kind of Ziggy Stardust, and then I like the early 80s Let's Dance stuff. I love that record.
I'm okay with the China Girl and all that. I don't mind it at all.
I love it. Yeah, it's probably one of my favorite records. It might be my favorite David Bowie record.
That's a good. The one thing about Bowie,
that was a good album.
The one thing about Bowie, every album he changed, which is brilliant, look wise, sound wise. It's almost like, even if jumping it further down, Marilyn Manson was like that for a little bit. He still kind of does it. Every record is different. After like by the second or third record, it was different. It wasn't the same. Mm-hmm. And Bowie's definitely probably the greatest of doing that, being able to morph into something new and totally different and still be accepted. Nobody goes, oh, that was Bowie's bad time. He just was able to change. Always evolving.
Midnight edition.
Oh, yeah. The midnight edition of mixtapes and tastes.
Mixtapes and midnight cakes.
Yeah.
Midnight snacks. Mixtapes and midnight snacks.
This is Bert
I got some Hot
Lepore
Pockets.
for Damian Monte Carlo and Angry Mike D. Snacks out.
Snacks out.
Snacks out. I don't know. Fucking something stupid. See you next week. Late.